All right, so while I am painting my mouselings here, I'm going to do a read along. The next section we're covering is actions, and on page 13 it starts with turns and actions. It says the game of Burrows and Badgers is divided into turns. When a character does something during the turns called an action. Once a model has acted, that model may not act again until the next turn. A turn begins with all the models ready to act and ends when all the models have acted. The first player will act with one of their characters. When they have carried out that action, the opposing player then gets to act with one of their characters. This continues, swapping back and forth between players until all the models have acted. The turn then ends, and players will check if the game's victory conditions are met or if the game will continue. If it does continue, a new turn begins. So in the turn sequence, there's an initiative phase, and then there's an action phase and an end phase. I'm not going to cover the initiative phase just right now. I'm going to stick to the action phase. The starting player chooses one model from their warband to act, and the player then performs the action, and any results of that action are applied immediately. And the opposing player chooses one of the models from their warband to act. As stated before, play passes back and forth in this manner until all models have acted. A player cannot pass their go. If they have a model to activate, it must be activated. If one player runs out of models to activate, the other player then continues activating their models until they have all performed an action. So, in the action phase, each model may choose an action from the following list to perform: sprint, attack, shoot, cast spell, search, and hide. So declaring an action. The player must state which model they are using to perform the action. Then they state what action will be performed and indicate any enemy model targeted by the action. Then the player indicates where they intend to move. Once both players are clear on what is planned, then the acting player may begin moving their model and rolling any dice required. I've already covered movement in a previous video, so check that out. And I'll mention it again in this video, that it is important to note that most actions have a move listed as a core part of the action, and as such there is no pure move action. The sprint action is actually a double move. A model making a sprint action may make two moves. They cannot do anything else this turn other than defend themselves from attacks, shooting, and spells as normal. A model making an attack action may make one move. The move must end with the model in base contact with an enemy model. If the movement is through difficult terrain and the distance moved is insufficient to reach base contact with the enemy, then the attack has failed, and the model stops at the end of its move and may do nothing further during this action. If you move more than 2 inches and perform an attack action, you gain a +2 bonus to your roll. However, to gain this bonus, at no point can your move have taken you further away from the enemy model than when you started. Once in base contact, the acting model makes a roll-off on their strike statistic against the opposing model's block statistic. Apply any modifiers as appropriate. If the attack succeeds, the defending model has been wounded and will have to mark off a number of wound boxes on his warband roster equal to the result. If a model has more than one enemy model in base contact, it is outnumbered. An outnumbered model suffers a -1 cumulative penalty to block roll-offs for every enemy model in base contact with it. So a model with one enemy in base contact suffers no modifiers for outnumbering, as it is not outnumbered. A model with two enemies in base contact would suffer a -2 penalty to block roll-offs, and a model with three enemies in base contact would suffer a -3 penalty, and so on. In this way, a large melee with multiple combatants in it becomes a very dangerous place indeed. Moving out of combat. If you are in base combat with a model that moves, then you may do nothing provided the enemy does not move more than a total of 2 inches. If the enemy model moves more than 2 inches, any of your models that were in base contact with the moving model may make an immediate free attack action. This does not cost any actions, and you may do it even if your models have already acted this turn. This attack action differs from a normal one. It is a strike roll-off as usual, but is taken against your opponent's nimbleness stat rather than their block. Kind of reminds me of an opportunity attack in D&D. You also have the shoot action. A model making a shoot action may make one move. The move must end with the model able to draw at least partial line of sight to the target, and the target must be within the range of the weapon used. If the shooter does not move, they gain a +2 bonus on the ranged roll-off. The acting model takes a roll-off using their ranged statistic against the target model's nimbleness statistic. Apply any modifiers as appropriate. If the roll-off is a success, the missile has hit and the target is wounded and will suffer a number of wounds equal to the result. A model may not roll off for shooting while in base contact with an enemy or within 2 inches of an enemy, but could first move away. If the shooting model only has partial line of sight to the target model, apply a -1 penalty to the shooter's roll. If the target model is in base contact with a terrain piece, apply a -1 penalty to the shooter's roll. So shooting into combat. If the target model is in base contact with one or more of the shooting player's models, they may be targeted, but the shooting player must first roll a d6. On a roll of 3 through 6, shoot as normal. On a roll of 1 or 2, the shot has targeted a friendly model. The shooting player's opponent may choose which model is the target. Roll the roll-off as normal and apply any damage caused. Cast spell. If the character has magical ability, they may attempt to cast a spell. A model making a cast spell action may make one move before casting. If the spellcaster does not move, they gain a +2 bonus to the casting roll-off. To cast a spell, the casting model must take a fortitude or presence roll-off against the target of the spell, depending on which school of magic they are using. If the acting player's roll is equal to or lower than the opposing roll, the spell fails to cast. If it is higher, the spell is successfully cast, and so apply its effects as detailed in the spell description. Some spells require roll-offs against the spell's target statistics. If the spellcaster's result is higher than the target's, the spell is cast, and apply its effects immediately. The spell may be cast upon any unhidden model on the tabletop, with the following restrictions. Many spells require line of sight and have a maximum range. The target of the spell must be within the stated range to be affected by it. If the caster only has partial line of sight, there is a -1 penalty to the casting roll-off. A spell which has a range cannot be cast if the caster is in base contact with an enemy. Spells with no range listed can be cast while in base contact. Spells may always be cast onto the caster themselves or another model in their own warband, even if that model is hidden if the player so wishes. If at any time a magic user is taken out of action, all spells they cast immediately end. Spells will often list an ingredient or two. Ingredients are available for purchase while trading or can be obtained through den upgrades, and see page 99 for a list of ingredients. Hopefully you have a copy of the rulebook. If the magic user has these ingredients and chooses to use one or both of them, the spell will be either easier to cast, more powerful, or both. Ingredients can only be used once. Cross them off your warband roster as they are used. The player must declare that they are using the ingredients before rolling to cast the spell. And you can cast spells into combat. Most spells can be cast freely at models engaged in combat. The exception are spells that cause wounds, such as lightning or Morglum's fiery blast. If you wish to cast a wounding spell at a target model which is in base contact with one or more of your models, you may do so, but you must first roll a d6. On a roll of 3 through 6, you cast the spell as normal. On a roll of 1 or 2, the spell has targeted a friendly model, and your opponent may choose which model is the target. Roll the casting roll-off as normal and apply any damage caused. You can also do a search action. A search action can be performed in two ways. In some situations, players will be required to search an area for an item. This will normally be a piece of terrain. In others, a player may wish to search for a hidden enemy model. A model making a search action for a hidden enemy model cannot move. To perform a search action for a hidden enemy model, the searching model must have at least partial line of sight to the hidden enemy model or be within 6 inches of it. The model will then make a roll-off using their awareness statistic against the concealment of the hidden enemy, subject to any of the modifiers below. If the roll-off is a success, the hidden enemy is revealed and no longer counts as hidden. So there's a table here called Searching for an Enemy table. So if the enemy model is a hidden enemy model has not moved this turn, the modifier is a -3. Every friendly model within 6 inches of the hidden enemy model gives you a +2 modifier. Every friendly model within 6 to 12 inches of the hidden enemy model gives you a +1 modifier. Each friendly model with at least partial line of sight to the hidden enemy model gives you a +1 modifier. A model making a search action for a hidden item, such as searching a terrain piece for a scenario-specific object, may make one move. The move must end with the model in base contact with the terrain piece. If the searcher does not move, they gain a +2 bonus to the search roll-off. Make a roll-off using their awareness statistic against the target of the hidden item. If the roll-off is a success, the item is found and the model may add it to their equipment. There is a +1 bonus for each successive turn spent searching and a +1 bonus for each friendly model who has also performed a search action that turn on the same terrain piece. So you have a searching for items table, and it says here the item is easily spotted. The target to beat is a 3. If the item is concealed, the target to beat is a 5. If the item is well hidden, the target to beat is 7. And if the item is cunningly disguised, the target to beat is a 9. And you can also make a hide action. Sometimes a model will wish to hide. A hidden model cannot be attacked, shot at, or targeted with spells except by friendly magic users, and counts as being ready to ambush. A model making a hide action may make one move. However, the move must end with the hiding model in base contact with a terrain piece or totally out of line of sight of any enemy models. The model then automatically becomes hidden. If you do move first, keep a note of how far you have moved. You may use any remaining movement during ambushing. So ambushes. If you have a model which is hidden and an enemy model within line of sight and range, parenthesized here, either of your remaining move for attacks or of your weapon range for shooting, declares a move, attack, shoot, or cast spell action, then you may make an immediate ambush if you wish, even if you have acted this turn already. Once your opponent has declared their action, but has not begun any moves or rolling any dice, you may interrupt them and perform an ambush. Alternatively, you may interrupt after they move, but before any roll-offs are taken, or in the case of sprinting enemy, you may interrupt them before the first move, after the first move, or after the second move. The interrupted model may continue their action afterwards, assuming they are able to. Take a roll-off using the ambusher's concealment statistic against the target's awareness statistic with the modifiers from the table below. If the roll-off fails, the target has spotted the ambusher. The ambusher will still attack, but will resolve the attack using the normal attack-shoot rules with a -2 penalty. If the roll-off succeeds, the ambusher makes a surprise attack. Move into base contact for attack ambushes. Then take the appropriate roll-off, parenthesized here, strike statistic for attack ambushes, range statistic for shooting ambushes with any modifiers if applicable, end parentheses. But the target may not attempt to block or dodge. As such, they roll no dice for block or nimbleness. The roll is the result, and you apply wounds normally. If the ambusher is making an attack ambush and has to move through difficult terrain, and the distance moved is insufficient to reach base contact with the enemy, then the ambush has failed even if the concealment roll-off was a success. The model stops at the end of its move and may do nothing further during this action. After making an ambush attack, the model no longer counts as hidden and may do nothing else that turn. And then you have the ambush modifiers table and the ambusher column and a modifier column. So apart from the target, no other enemy within 12 inches of ambusher at the start of ambush. Your modifier is +5. Ambusher has not moved this turn, modifier +3. Every enemy model within 6 inches at start of the ambush is a -2 modifier. And each enemy model with clear or partial line of sight to the ambusher at the start of the ambush creates a -1 modifier. Performing an ambush or any action other than hide will cause the model to no longer be hidden. And then there's a little box here that says any attacks or shooting arising from a hide ambush action do not count as attack or shoot actions for the purposes of triggering other ambushes. So that covers all of the actions. As you can see, it's going to take a little bit of practice. There's a lot there. Nothing too difficult to figure out. Next, probably we'll cover magic. Magic is a really big section. So until next time, thanks for watching, and give me a thumbs up and hopefully subscribe. Take care.